It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. After an earlier invitation from the King, Donald Trump says that a September date is being set for his visit to the UK. As European leaders push for a deal on Ukraine, Donald Trump says a minerals agreement with Kyiv will be signed next week, but continues his criticism of President Zelensky.
I'm not happy with him, and I'm not happy with anybody involved.
After yesterday's Supreme Court gender ruling promised a legal clarity, we look at the public sector workers caught up in the aftermath. Evidence of life elsewhere in the universe on a planet 700 trillion miles away, found by scientists in Cambridge. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Good evening. Well, it was a big day of meetings and an attempt to bring a ceasefire in Ukraine. But amidst all the tensions over Ukraine and tariffs, there was some welcome news for Sir Keir Starmer after these remarks tonight from the President.
I was invited by the King and by the country, great country, they're going to do a second, as you know, a second fest. And that's what it is. It's a fest, and it's beautiful. And it's the first time it's ever happened to one person. And the reason is that we have two separate terms. And it's an honor to be, I'm a friend of Charles. I have great respect for King Charles and the family, William. We have just really just a great respect for the family. And it's a very great honor that, and I think they're setting a date for September.
So let's bring in now US correspondent Mark Stone. So, Mark, no actual date in September, but this is the first that we've heard that there will be a visit in September.
Yes, and the president seemed to be suggesting that the September visit would be the state visit. I'm not sure that that is actually the case. It was always the case that Donald Trump would visit the UK at some point this year as part of a trip that would be ostensibly to see the Prime Minister, to see Keir Starmer. And when the Prime Minister offered that second state visit, when he came here, the discussions were had about whether he would, when he came to see the Prime Minister, whenever that is, and it looks like that's now September, they would have discussions. He would meet the King. There was a suggestion it might be at Balmoral, near his golf course in Scotland, and that moment would be the moment with the King to discuss the state visit, which would come at some point later. So I think that's what this September visit is. It is not the state visit, but it will be a key moment, of course. Britain's soft power is valuable to it. The special relationship is strained at the moment, like America's relationships with most countries around the world are. And so to deploy that letter out of his jacket, as he did when he came here to the Oval Office, Keir Starmer is using that soft power, and you could see from the president's reaction there, and indeed when he received the letter, he's very pleased with this. He likes this sort of stuff, and for a country, the UK, that is keen to strike an economic deal to remove the 10% tariffs that are in place against it, these moments are very important. I should say that I think Britain expects that some sort of an economic deal will come much sooner than September. But all of this together, it kind of massages the president, and it's important. It is also controversial. I mean, it's worth saying that the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has chosen a very particular course in terms of how he deals with Donald Trump. He's chosen not to reciprocate on any tariffs. His language has been effusive. He has not been critical of the president, despite all the stuff about, the 51st state and Canada. Canada, of course, a NATO country, a member of the Commonwealth. Keir Starmer has not done any criticism. He sees himself as a bridge between America and Europe, and so he's treading carefully. But it is, of course, controversial because tariffs have a massive economic impact in the UK. Donald Trump is not a popular guy in the UK, and so I imagine when this visit comes in September, it will be shrouded with some degree of protest as well. But British soft power at work here, as we've seen before, as the special relationship is somewhat strained.
OK, Mark, thank you. Well, our political correspondent, Serena Barker-Singh, is in Westminster for us tonight. And Serena, as we've been hearing from Mark there, primarily this visit from Donald Trump will be to meet Sir Keir Starmer.
Yet it appears that way. Donald Trump was asked whether September was the date he was thinking. He seemed to respond yes. And I think Downing Street always knew that having an unpredictable character in the White House was going to pose them problems. But now details that we'd been asking for weeks, that we'd wanted to hear from Downing Street, have been seemingly revealed by those figures across the pond. We had J.D. Vance earlier this week saying that a trade deal was almost, ready to be signed. We knew it was coming down the track, but we seem to be getting more and more detail from the White House. And I think why this is important is because of that crucial UK trade deal that we're trying to get with America because of these tariffs. We had no idea when the timeline was coming for that, but it seems our biggest bargaining chip, this not so state visit, but a royal visit for Donald Trump, now being in September, seems like there's a deadline for when this trade deal has to happen. Now, Number 10 are not commenting on this. They're not commenting on this supposed call between Sir Keir Starmer and Donald Trump. There's been no readouts, and the Prime Minister is meant to be on holiday abroad this week. So they really, really don't want to comment on this, and that is because this trade deal is so sticky and it hasn't been signed and the stakes are so high.
Serena, thank you. Also tonight, the slow and often torturous progress towards a ceasefire deal in Ukraine continued, with some of the major players meeting in an attempt to broker a deal. Donald Trump's US envoy, Steve Witkoff, and his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, met the French President, Emmanuel Macron, and other Western officials in Paris to discuss Ukraine. But the ability of the US team to be seen as honest brokers was called into question after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Mr. Witkoff of spreading Russian narratives. Mr. Trump was in the White House meeting the Italian Prime Minister and ally, Giorgia Meloni. Well, speaking this evening, he repeated his criticism of the Ukrainian president, but had some news of progress, saying that a minerals deal with Kyiv could be signed next week. Here's our US correspondent, James Matthews.
From the White House, you could see the townhouse where the Italian president had stayed before her meeting. It was a trip across the street for the woman touted as a bridge to Europe.
Prime Minister Meloni, can you make a deal?
Giorgia Meloni is the political soulmate they call the Trump whisperer.
The goal for me is to make the West great again. Okay? And I think we can do it together.
We can.
Italy's right-wing prime minister was here to talk tariffs on Europe's behalf. A friendly face on a forward recce, and they knocked it forward.
So I want to thank President Trump for having accepted an invitation to pay an official visit to Rome in the near future, and consider a possibility in that occasion to meet also with Europe.
On another day of world leader talks, there was an everyday agenda. On Ukraine, Trump confirmed the signing of a minerals deal with Kyiv.
We have a minerals deal, which I guess is going to be signed on Thursday.
On who started the Ukraine war, the Zelensky did he, didn't he, took another Trump twist. He didn't.
I'm not blaming him, but what I am saying is that I wouldn't say he's done the greatest job, okay? I'm not a big fan. I really am. I'm not a big fan.
On the same day in Paris, there was diplomacy to kickstart peace efforts. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and negotiator Steve Witkoff met President Macron, foreign ministers, and a delegation from Ukraine. President Zelensky wasn't there. He was back in Kyiv, but had Steve Witkoff, the US negotiator, on his mind and in his sights.
I believe that Mr. Witkoff has taken on the strategy of the Russian side. I think it is very dangerous because he is consciously or unconsciously, I don't know, spreading the Russian narrative.
On a range of issues, this is a White House bouncing between hope and expectation. It was the latter over lunch for President and Prime Minister.
Oh, there'll be a trade deal, 100%. Oh, well, you think there won't be? Of course there'll be a trade deal, very much. They want to make one very, very much, and we're going to make a trade deal. I fully expect it, but it'll be a fair deal.
There was much to discuss in this cordial meeting between two best friends. On tariffs, their best efforts will next be tested in a wider forum by European countries robust so far in their resistance. The takeaway might have been confidence in reaching a deal, but on this journey, the main players remain some distance apart. James Matthews, Sky News in Washington.
Yesterday's ruling on the definition of a woman by the Supreme Court promised to bring legal clarity to an issue that had previously brought only polarisation and confusion. 24 hours later, there is no sign of that promise being fulfilled, with the Conservative leader accusing Labour of gaslighting and public bodies fumbling to work out how to respond. One of the bodies most affected is the NHS. Here's our health correspondent, Laura Bundock.
Now, woman means biological woman.
They are the front-line nurses caught up in the politics of gender, both part of a group suing their hospital after a trans colleague was allowed to use the women's changing room.
We don't want to get undressed in front of a man, and we don't want to see them getting undressed either. It's about dignity and respect and privacy, actually, and that is not afforded when a man is able to access a single-sex facility.
The Supreme Court ruling on the definition of a woman. Welcome news here.
We were absolutely delighted, I couldn't actually speak.
We're just really happy to have it confirmed that, you know, we are within our rights to feel the way we feel.
A spokesperson for County Durham and Darlington NHS Trust said, "We are aware of the Supreme Court ruling and this will be carefully considered when reviewing our policies." But policies everywhere are now under scrutiny. The current NHS guidance says trans people should be accommodated according to their presentation, the way they dress, their names and their pronouns.
The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman.
This ruling means the NHS got it wrong, and the guidance needs rewriting.
The most important thing that we have now is that clarity from the court, which means that NHS services, other services in the public and the private sector now have that clarity to provide those services.
There's clarity in the law, but practically it's less clear what happens next. Take one example, single-sex wards, over 9,500 times in January and February this year.
There's now huge pressure on the NHS to make changes. Big decisions and dilemmas lie ahead over how to do this with both speed and sensitivity.
We want the policy changed and it should reflect the law, and that's what we're asking for. The policy should be changed across the board, across the NHS and in all trusts.
Trans groups are disappointed and worried. The challenge, treating trans people with respect while respecting the law on single-sex spaces. Laura Bundock, Sky News.
Are we alone in the universe? It's a question that's always fascinated scientists and stargazers since the dawn of civilization. Today, though, we moved a step closer to getting an answer. A team in Cambridge has discovered new evidence that a faraway planet may be home to life. Our science correspondent Thomas Moore has been taking a look at the planet known as K2-18b.
Are we alone in the universe? Well, perhaps not. This is K2-18b, as astronomers believe it may well look. It has a massive ocean covering its surface, and it is where there is the strongest evidence yet that there is life. It's 700 trillion miles away from Earth, just over 2.5 times larger, and roughly the same temperature. And that is the James Webb Space Telescope, which was pointed towards the planet. Scientists from the University of Cambridge looked at how the planet's atmosphere absorbed light, and they found curious peaks in the data, suggesting the atmosphere contains either the chemical dimethyl sulfide or dimethyl disulfide, or perhaps even both. On Earth, the chemicals are produced by ocean plankton and other microorganisms, and as yet there is no other explanation for what could cause the chemicals to be on K2-18b. At the moment, there is a slight uncertainty, a 3 in 1,000 chance that the findings are a statistical fluke, and further observations are needed to reduce those odds to just 1 in a million. Then they'll be confident what they're seeing is real, with far-reaching implications.
That question, are we alone, is the most fundamental questions that we have always asked as a species in all forms and all cultures everywhere on Earth. And this would be, if this is proven, this would be our first answer to that, regardless of whether it's complex life, regardless of whether it's intelligent life. The very principle that biology is possible elsewhere in the cosmos is a radical shift in our understanding.
There are no images of the planet, and they haven't found life, just indirect evidence. Some astronomers say it's not even certain K2-18b has an ocean or one that can harbour microorganisms. But the Cambridge team are increasingly confident and believe if life has been evolving elsewhere once, it could have done so many times.
A woman who is under police investigation after assisting the suicide of her husband in Switzerland has told Sky News she has no regrets. Louise Shackleton was speaking publicly for the first time since her husband died last December after she travelled with him to the Dignitas clinic. She then handed herself into police. It comes as Parliament prepares to vote on the next stage of legislation to introduce assisted dying in England and Wales. Our chief North of England correspondent, Greg Milam, reports.
Within hours of this photo being taken, Anthony Shackleton was dead. In Switzerland, with his wife Louise at his side, he'd chosen to end his life at the Dignitas clinic rather than wait for the death that motor neurone disease would bring him.
We talked at length over 2 years about this, and what he said to me on many occasions is, look at my options. Look at what my options are. I can either go there and I can die peacefully, with grace, without pain, without suffering, or I could be laid in a bed, not being able to move, not even being able to look at anything unless you move my head. What he wanted, nothing more but a good death.
They made that journey 5 months ago.
We got on the plane, and he turned and looked at me, and he said, they can't stop us now, can they, Lou? And I said, I don't think they can. And he relaxed. He immediately relaxed, physically relaxed, mentally relaxed. And if you haven't been there and seen something like that, you would never know. And we had the most wonderful 4 days. He was laughing. He was at total peace with his decision. And it was in those 4 days that I realised that he wanted the peaceful death more than he wanted to suffer and stay with me, which was hard, but that's how resolute he was in having this peace. Yeah. I was his wife, been together 25 years. We'd known each other since we were 18. I couldn't do anything else but help him.
But it means Louise remains under police investigation. While prosecutions are rare, that's the reality in the UK for those who make that journey. And one reason, she says, the assisted dying bill is needed.
He had a beautiful death. He fell asleep in my arms. And as I laid with him, it was surreal. I had to call an Uber. And I remember as I walked out of there, as I walked out of there, there was this panic and this fear that I was leaving him. And I didn't know who I was leaving him with. But I also didn't know where I was going and what I was going to do. If the law has changed in this country, I would have been with family. Family would have been with us. Family would have been with him. But as it was, that couldn't happen. I have committed a crime, which I have admitted to, of assisting him by simply pushing him onto a plane and being with him, which I don't regret for one moment. He was my husband, and I loved him.
There's obviously a lot of opposition, and you've heard all that opposition.
Yeah.
What do you say to the opponents of a law, an assisted dying law?
I think that we need to safeguard people. I think that sometimes we need to suffer other people's choices. And when I mean suffer, I mean we have to acknowledge that whilst we're not comfortable with those, that we need to respect other people's wishes.
We're talking in the home she and Anthony adapted as his condition deteriorated, close to the workshop, where he'd earned worldwide recognition for making rocking horses.
Why did you want to talk publicly about this, your experience and what you think?
I felt that my husband's journey shouldn't be in vain. We discussed this on our last day, and my husband made me promise to tell his story. And he told me to fight, and the simple thing that I'm fighting for is people to have the choice. This is about a dying person's choice to either follow their journey through with that disease or to die peacefully when they want to, on their terms, and have a good death. It's that simple.
Greg Milam, Sky News.
And remember, if you've been affected by anything you heard there in Greg's report, you can contact the Samaritans on 116 123 or email joe@samaritans.org. At least 4 people have died and another has been seriously injured after a cable car crashed to the ground in Italy. 16 passengers were helped out of a separate cable car stuck in mid-air at the site of the accident near Naples. The governor of the region confirmed that the 4 dead were 2 couples who were tourists. The only survivor, a middle-aged male, is in a critical condition. Officials say the crash was caused when a cable snapped. 2 people have been killed and 5 others injured after a shooting at Florida State University. The local sheriff says that a 20-year-old man is in custody in connection with the shooting at the campus in Tallahassee. Police report that he's a current student at the university. Pope Francis has visited Rome's main prison and met inmates, keeping with an Easter tradition of spending Holy Thursday with the less fortunate. The pontiff is recovering from a bout of double pneumonia, which resulted in a 5-week stay in hospital, but is expected to make further public appearances over the Easter weekend. The chief executive of the company that owns Toby Carvery says that he's very sorry for the upset caused by the felling of an ancient oak tree in North London. The company claims that the tree, thought to be over 400 years old, was felled because specialists had advised them it was a potential health and safety risk. To Birmingham now, and the ongoing bin strikes that have caused rubbish to pile up across the city. The council say they're clearing up the uncollected waste as talks continue to end the Unite Union's industrial action. But residents and businesses are worried weeks and weeks of negative headlines have damaged the Birmingham brand. Our Midlands correspondent Lisa Dowd has been catching up with some of the city's most well-known musicians to see what they make of it all.
Their songs have always had a political edge, and nearly 40 years after this was released, the Rats in UB40's home city of Birmingham are a problem again. But the band back the strike and strikers who've helped them flourish.
We have total, utter support for the bin men and all trade unions.
For months, the UK's second city has been making international headlines for all the wrong reasons. The group say it's unfair.
I think it's a shame that what we're seeing is all these images of rats and rubbish building up and stuff. And yeah, that is going to happen inevitably, but we just got to keep fighting through that.
Stand firm.
Yeah. We keep the red flag flying here.
Oh, that's going to get used.
That's going to go on. Yeah.
How do you feel about the council's involvement and the government's involvement?
The other side is always going to say, we've made a reasonable offer. You know, the point is, they're the ones that have messed up. They're the ones that have gone bankrupt.
22,000 tonnes of waste built up when workers walked out. The council and the government say they should accept what they call a fair and reasonable offer.
And I pay tribute to the council and to hundreds of workers that have been working around the clock to make sure that that can be cleared. And as we stand here today, 85% of that accumulated waste has been cleared, and the council have a plan in place now to make sure that it doesn't accumulate going forward.
Workers, though, are still picketing, worried that some will be up to £600 a month worse off if they accept the terms. Negotiations aren't due to resume for a week. UB40 say they shouldn't back down.
I really do feel proud of coming from Birmingham, because I do really feel it has had a profound effect on my attitude towards the world and my life in general.
Do you feel proud of the bin workers?
Yeah, I do, sticking to what they believe in, and I'll feel even prouder when they win.
Lisa Dowd, Sky News, Birmingham.
The King has released his Easter message, reflecting on examples of great cruelty and great kindness and the paradox of human life. The message was published as he and the Queen attended Durham Cathedral for a traditional Maundy Thursday service. But his arrival wasn't welcomed by everyone, as our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills reports.
At Durham Cathedral, the King and Queen arrived, following a centuries-old tradition for British monarchs, the marking of Maundy Thursday.
You are to love one another.
But King Charles began the day with another tradition that he started, setting out how he believes we can all learn from the Easter message. The King wrote, "One of the puzzles of our humanity is how we're capable of both great cruelty and great kindness. This paradox of human life runs through the Easter story and in the scenes that daily come before our eyes." He added, "There are three virtues that the world still needs: faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love." Releasing an Easter message was something he started to do as Prince of Wales. Now, of course, he takes on the responsibilities of monarch, handing out the Maundy money to recognise those who've helped their own churches and communities.
The pomp and ceremony that is behind this makes it mean so much. You know, if you've been working with communities for 50 years like I have, and then suddenly somebody pops up and says, "You're doing a good job," that means something.
He made you feel as if you were the only person in the whole cathedral, even though you knew you were with hundreds of people. And when he gave you the coins in your hand, he actually held your hand and put them into your hand.
But their arrival wasn't welcomed by everyone. Shouts of "Not my king" mixed in with the cheers.
Down with the crown! Down with the crown!
Things have certainly changed since his mother's reign, just like his decision to release an annual message to mark this time of year.
King Charles, honour to meet you.
Words that he hopes promote love and acceptance, whatever your beliefs may be. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News.
Bit of sport for you now. It's been a busy night in Europe for British teams. Manchester United are playing against extra time against Lyon in the Europa League. It's currently 4-2 on the night to the French side, 6-4 to them on aggregate. If it stays like this, then United will be out of the competition. Tottenham Hotspur are through to the semi-finals. Dominic Solanke's penalty gave them a 1-0 win on the night. It finished 2-1 to Spurs on aggregate. Rangers won't be joining them, though, in the final four. They were beaten 2-0 on aggregate by Athletic Club in Spain. And Chelsea are into the semi-finals of the Conference League, despite losing to Legia Warsaw on the night. They won 4-2 on aggregate. Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers and the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the PR consultant, Alex Dean, and the Belfast Telegraph columnist, Alison Morris. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Mirror, about the woman under police investigation after assisting at the suicide of her husband in Switzerland. The headline, "It's time." We'll be right back. Do stay with us.